Good night. Welcome to Baltimore County Campaign for Liberty. If you thought this was some other club meeting, then you're in the wrong place. Do we have any first-timers? First time coming to the meeting tonight?
All right.
Great, awesome. Welcome. I don't do that to make it feel like this is a AA meeting, sitting around getting to know each other. We just like to see, like, as we're building and growing, attendance fluctuates for weather and many other reasons.
Larry, that's what we need is a 12-step program to get rid of government.
I like it. Well, step one is you're here, right? So that's a good start. So what is Campaign for Liberty? For those of you who have not been to one of our meetings before, Campaign for Liberty is a grassroots political organization whose mission is to promote and defend the great American principles of individual liberty, constitutional government, sound money, free markets, and a non-interventionist foreign policy by ways of education and political activity. So that's kind of a snapshot of what we're all about. To give you a little bit more about what we're about, there's two seasons in politics. There's an election season and there's an legislative season. And during the election season, people who aspire to be politicians or are politicians will tell you all the wonderful things they're going to do for you when they get into office. And then the legislative season is all the things that they're doing to you that you don't like behind closed doors. Okay, our role as political activists is to bring these two seasons and sessions together so that we hold them accountable in the election season for what they did to us in the legislative season. Okay, so that's just a little snapshot of what we do and why we do it. This group, just to give you a heads up, we usually, if you have to duck out early or if you miss this, we usually head over to Chili's right afterwards. It's connected to the building. You don't even have to go get wet. And we hang out, we have a few drinks, we get to know each other and talk about some more politics, which is fun. Tonight we're going to offer some education on some current events. We're going to talk about some principles, some ideas, and we're going to provide an opportunity for you to engage in some political activity. You have a handout on your chairs. This is a little bit of a syllabus of what we're doing tonight. First up, we have The Law, which is a book by Frédéric Bastiat. It was written in the 1800s. He was a French writer and economist, a brilliant guy. If you've never read the book, I highly recommend getting it. I think we have copies up here for $5 or $10. It's probably the best book I've ever read. I'm not kidding, as far as the role of government. So Patrick Caniso is going to come up and talk a little bit about the law and how it applies today.
I have 3 points to be found supportive of tonight's rain tax topic. Not a terribly long amount of time, so let's get at it apace. In Notes on Democracy, H.L. Mencken begins his section, The Politician Under Democracy, with his usual curt words. His business is never what it pretends to be. Ostensibly, he is an altruist devoted wholeheartedly to the service of his fellow men and so objectively public-spirited that his private interest is actually nothing to him. Actually, he is a sturdy rogue whose principal and often sole aim in life is to butter his parsnips. His technical equipment consists simply of an armamentarium of deceits. It is his business to get and hold his job at all costs. There is in him, in his professional aspect, no shadow of principle or honor. It is moral by his code to get into office by false pretenses. It is moral to change convictions overnight, as multitudes of American politicians did when the Prohibition avalanche came down upon them. Side note, also gay marriage and everything. We have modern examples of that. Anything is moral that concerns the main concern of his soul, which is to keep a place at the public trough. That place is one of public honor, and public honor is the thing that caresses him and makes him happy. It is also one of power, and power is the commodity that he has for sale. We should not blush while sitting here, of course, because we know the dichotomy between good men and bad, and Mencken continued on to point that out. So that's the first point. Politicians will not tell you anything that does not advance their plans. Usually so simple as merely remaining elected, this extends to their more exacerbating forays as well. Bastiat reviews the man Montesquieu. Montesquieu says, "Note the marvelous genius of these legislators. By debasing all established customs, by mixing the usual concepts of all virtues, they knew in advance that the world would admire their wisdom. Lycurgus gave the stability to his city of Sparta by combining petty thievery with the soul of justice, by combining the most complete bondage with the most extreme of liberty, by combining the most atrocious beliefs with the greatest moderation. By this road, Lycurgus led Sparta on to greatness and glory. Mr. William Penn, for example, is a true Lycurgus. Even though Mr. Penn has peace as his objective, while Lycurgus has war as his objective, they resemble each other in that their moral prestige over free men allowed them to overcome prejudices, subdue passions, and lead their respective peoples into new paths. Bastia. It is frightful. It is abominable. These random selections from the writings of Montesquieu show that he considers persons, liberty, property, all of mankind to be nothing but materials for legislators to exercise their wisdom upon. So that's the second point. The statist and socialist pines for personal ideas and goals to be adhered by every man. Moving on, a quote from Robespierre. The principle of the Republican government is virtue, and the means to establish virtue is terror. We desire to substitute all the virtues and miracles of a republic for all the vices and absurdities of a monarchy. Basquiat's response, at what a tremendous height above the rest of mankind does Robespierre here place himself. And note the arrogance with which he speaks. He is not content to pray for a great reawakening of the human spirit, nor does he expect such a result from a well-ordered government. No, he himself will remake mankind by means of terror. So there's the third point. Robespierre has quite an idea. Maybe terror is necessary to make Spartan sub-segments of the world. His opinion was that without terror, the state cannot control the people. But he was wrong about where the terror should reside and who should control whom while there are still governments on this earth. Our representatives should not be prescribing leanness to us, but catering to the spirit of the Constitution and inhibiting the largesse and Lycurgian prohibitions of our current Leviathan. Right now, the private sector assumes a Spartan leanness. Government employees get paid more than private counterparts, have more job security, and enjoy state-backed pensions. The Prince George's County schools spend about $500,000 of stimulus money on parties for parents, teachers, and administrators, while the Baltimore City schools search for more funds. Dianne Feinstein scolded us for complaining about our Fourth Amendment rights being transgressed until she herself was found to be the target of probing. You will doubtless find many angles where the statists are trying to force leanness upon the citizenry in Mr. Rothschild's talk today. Government should be made to assume that leanness instead of us. Government should not lead us by any means into any ends. Government is best that governs least, and government that fears the people serves the people. The most effective instigation of this is action, and action requires understanding. You can reach that understanding by reading the core pieces of literature forming the foundation of the enlightened man. In order to regain our liberty, we all have to make an effort to see the world as it is.
All right. Next up, we have Mitch Tolan. He's going to come up and do the Liberty Blast. This is where he takes each one of our 5 core principles and he applies a local news article or a current issue, current event to one of those.
I'll be brief. First we'll touch on is the free market, and that deals with, in New Jersey, the sale of Tesla cars has been banned, and it was not by the legislature but by a rulemaking body. And owner of Tesla, Elon Musk, called the process an effort to affront the very concept of the free market, while the New Jersey representative said that the statute is on the books to protect the consumer, and Tesla's business model crushes the competition. And what Tesla does is they sell directly to consumers instead of through franchises, which New Jersey requires be done. And Tesla accused New Jersey Governor Chris Christie of going back on an agreement to delay any changes to the regulations until the topic could be taken up by the state's legislature, rather than just the rulemaking body. Next, we'll touch on the individual liberty aspect, and that deals with the Army deploying 2 blimps over Abilene Proving Ground. And what they say will be testing up in the northeast corner of Maryland. These blimps will carry radar systems capable of detecting boats, trains, cars, and the Pentagon hopes cruise missiles. This will begin in October, and it's going to be on a 3-year installment of how the surveillance blimps could improve missile defense systems on the eastern seaboard. They can detect airborne objects up to 340 miles away and vehicles on the roads as far as 140 miles away. but they assured us that the Army does not have any plans to mount cameras or infrared sensors or to share the information that they capture with law enforcement. But as though the Post pointed out, they wouldn't rule that out entirely either. Non-interventionist foreign policy. I touched on a quote from John Kerry dealing with the Ukraine issue. He says, "It is really stunning, willful choice by President Putin to invade another country. We just don't in the 21st century behave in 19th century fashion by invading another country on completely trumped up pretext." Someone probably should have reminded him about Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Yugoslavia, and so on. And we'll get to constitutional government, which Patrick already touched on. I was going to talk about Feinstein and how she says she has grave concerns that it may have violated the Constitution. But I'll also get into the staunch defenders of the Constitution, John McCain and Lindsey Graham. McCain called the allegations disturbing and added that a full and complete investigation is needed. He also stressed he never had a great deal of confidence with Mr. Brennan, and therefore has no doubt this was done for political reasons. And then everyone's favorite, Lindsey Graham, said he is now calling for heads to roll. Heads should roll. People should go to jail if it's true. If it is, the legislative branch should declare war on the CIA. This is Richard Nixon stuff. This is dangerous to democracy. And then Feinstein added, "I have grave concerns that the CIA's search may well have violated the separation of powers principles embodied in the United States Constitution. I've asked for an apology and a recognition that the CIA's search of computers used by its oversight committee was inappropriate. I have received neither." So, good thing we have those people out there defending the Constitution. And next, we'll go to sound money. And the Oklahoma State Senate passed a bill that would legalize silver and gold as legal tender. They would be the second state to recognize gold and silver as legal tender, authorized for payments of debts and taxes, with last month the Arizona Senate also passing a similar bill. And that goes, there was an economist quoted, he also quotes the Constitution. The United States Constitution states in Article 1, Section 10, "No state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts." The Constitutional Tender Act, which is what was passed, is a big step towards that constitutional requirement, which has been ignored for a long time in every state. Such a tactic would achieve the desired goal of abolishing the Federal Reserve System by attacking it from the bottom up, pulling the rug out from under it, by working to make its functions irrelevant at the state and local level. Passage of this legislation would introduce currency competition with Federal Reserve notes. Professor William Green explains further. Over time, as residents of the state use both Federal Reserve notes and silver and gold coins, the fact that the coins hold their value more than the Federal Reserve notes will lead to a reverse Gresham's Law effect, where good money, the gold and silver, will drive out the bad money, the Federal Reserve notes. As this happens, a cascade of events can begin to occur, including the flow of real wealth toward the state's treasury, an influx of banking business from outside the state, as people in other states carry out their desire to bank with sound money, and an eventual outcry against the use of Federal Reserve notes for any transactions. And they go on to point out that we can abolish the Federal Reserve System without a single act by Congress, and we can bring it to its knees.
All right, next up on our agenda tonight is the natural rights segment from John Lurch, which will segue into our guest speaker for this evening. So, John Lurch.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I'm actually going to be speaking on a couple topics and covering a couple different things from different angles. The first thing I had talked about, Larry had asked me to give a short little segment, was on natural rights. Natural rights or true rights are rights given to us really by just nature of being born in our existence. We do not get natural rights. We do not get our rights from any government. I know Richard and I have talked about this, and he'll explain more through some of his speaking tonight. I'm sure we're going to cover that in our call to action. But your God-given rights are not granted to you or given to you by any legislation. When a legislator tells you he's giving you your rights, that should be a red flag letting you know that this guy is lying to you. Life, liberty, and property, pursuit of happiness, property, whatever we want to look at, are your rights inherited by your birth and not given you by anybody. And really, I guess the way I'm leading into this, we're finding less and less elected officials who not only believe in this, but know about this. So stepping into my Maryland legislative watch role for a little bit. There's a bill going out there now. We're going to cover it later, but I got into it with a delegate last week from Hartford County who's trying to usurp our rights as citizens to be involved in the political process. And he did not answer me. I just got back from Arizona last night. I was out there for about 5 days. And his staff and nobody from his whole office answered me. So I got back on to him today, and his staffer answered my call and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lurch, we're busy." And I'm like, "Well, you know, hey, I got business too. I got a job." So I said, "Well, would you mind if I post the fact that the delegate did not get back to me on Facebook?" So he says, "Well, I really wouldn't like that." So I went right on Facebook and posted it. I posted that the delegate had ample time to get back to me and didn't. And I was very disappointed in his actions. And I got a phone call right before I came out here tonight that the delegate will be calling me tomorrow morning. I think, well, I'm not taking a Facebook post down if that's what you're looking for. So just to let you know, that's kind of what we have to face. And this is someone who really has stood with us on a lot of issues, and I was very disappointed. Not going to mention a name, someone may mention that later. But I just want to let you guys know, when I speak about Maryland Legislative Watch, of watching these people and individual rights, individual actions that you can take, just one little post on Facebook really can cause a stir. And we did shut down I'm sorry, I can't remember the number, the HB Bill 528, that was the hidden compartment bill that was put out by Delegate McDermott from 38A on Eastern Shore. We did shut that bill down, so we did remove one bill. There was an anti-liberty bill about 2 weeks ago. Anyway, I want to get into my introduction of Richard Rothschild. He is a county commissioner from District 4 in Carroll County. I've known Richard for quite a while. He's one of our best guys out there. There's a lot of delegates in Maryland who are pretty good people, a lot of representatives, and have known Richard personally and professionally. I would say he's probably one of the best guys I've ever had the pleasure of being around. Just the one thing I really want to bring up about him. Richard takes a lot of heat from those who I would say are liberal, on the left, whatever you want to call that. But the one thing really is kind of surprising, how much heat he takes from his own fellow county commissioners for the simple fact that he stands on principle and he will not back down from anything. It's really a rare treat for me to be around people who take a principled stand, but take one and get beat up a lot and take a lot of bad press and will not waver in their position. And I think we're pretty lucky to have one guy like that in Maryland who really is standing up. Unfortunately, we don't have anybody like that in Baltimore County that I know, but we do have one in Carroll County. Having said that, I would like to introduce Richard Rothschild tonight. I believe he's going to speak on I'm sure you can fill it.
Nah, they don't want to hear my bio. They want to hear what I'm going to do for them.
Well, that's why I kind of short my
Better yet,
speech.
they want to hear what I've done for them because they don't need any more empty promises. Good evening, everybody. I had an interesting experience. We are honored to have Campaign for Liberty starting a chapter out in Carroll County. We appreciate it. We welcome it. I had an interesting discussion with a Carroll County resident who's involved with Campaign for Liberty about a questionnaire he was preparing to vet candidates. And it was a series of yes-no questions. And I'm not a big fan of yes-no questions because most people that are smart enough to run for office and win are smart enough to know how to lie on a questionnaire. And I have to tell you, I really oppose yes-no questions because I think and I'll give you an example of one, which I think is counterproductive. Do you support the Second Amendment? Yes or no? Do you know any Republicans that will say no to that? Do you know any Democrats that will say no to that? If they're for confiscating all your guns and leaving you nothing but a .22 rifle and a 12 gauge, they're going to say yes, they support it for hunting. You see what I'm saying? It's a meaningless question. So he said to me, what would you suggest, Rich? I said, I suggest you write the question this way. How far will you go to support the Second Amendment? And then leave me 3 blank lines. He says, what's the right answer? I said, all the way. That's the only answer. All the way, as far as necessary. And here's why. As you decide who to support and vote for in an upcoming election, I'm not talking about myself, because none of you can vote for me. None of you that I'm aware of. I say that the most critical issue facing our country, our state, and our counties is the Second Amendment. As long as we have the Second Amendment, we have a chance. If we lose the Second Amendment, we lose everything. So we can be optimistic. As long as we retain our firearms, we're good. As soon as they take that away, we're doomed. That's going to be the bellwether that determines whether America goes to the left or to the right. So that should be the kind of, you should be grilling the hell out of your candidates all over the state and country. What will you do to uphold the Second Amendment? How far will you go? And then just shut up and let them talk. That's my advice with respect to that. Now, why does the left do all these things to us? None of you know the answer to that question. Why do they do this to us?
Because we let them.
Because we let them. Right. That's because we let them. And it really is because we let them. I'm going to show you why today. I'm going to show you today that I believe that if I could clone a few dozen Rand Pauls around the country, around my county, I could stop just about everything the Democrats are doing overnight. I'm going to show you how. We can stop it immediately. Immediately. But it requires that Republicans and conservatives be willing to go reasonably far. The problem we have is most Republicans won't even go so far as risking embarrassment to themselves. Right? Like what would happen if in the legislature when they were working on SB 281, if every Republican stood up and shouted at the Democrats, one after another like machine gun fire. Yeah. One after another for an hour, kept going out and yelling at the Democrats, accusing them of sedition, and intimidated them. But we don't. I listened to the discussions in the chambers, and it's nothing but civility. Now, I'm not against civility, but I am against civility when they're trying to take away our constitutional rights. So anyway, with that, I'm going to mention the rain tax tonight, but I'm going to talk about something more important, which is how we beat them. That's all you really care about. You shouldn't waste any time to listen to Republicans that come in here and tell you how it would have been worse if they hadn't been there, and they don't have a plan to win. They're not worth listening to. So every elected official, what's your plan to win? I'm going to show you a plan to win that we're actually doing, and we're winning. How many of you know that Carroll County stopped the rain tax?
Yes.
We stopped it. We were told it had to do it. It was in statute. HB 97, you got no choice. We didn't implement one. Okay? Now, I'm not going to declare total victory because we won a battle. We didn't win the war yet. So with that, I'm going to get into a presentation. I actually prepared this presentation for Saturday. I'm going to have the honor of speaking at the Institute on the Constitution with Chief Justice Roy Moore from Alabama, the Ten Commandments judge. I'll be on a panel with him. It's going to be one of the highlights of my career, so I'm looking forward to that. And this is the presentation I prepared for that. Tools to stand our ground to defend our inalienable rights of life, liberty, property, and let's not forget God in there too, because that's where these rights come from. Okay. De facto rubric of all government overreach. Of all tyrannies, a tyranny exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It may be better to live under omnipotent, it may be better to live under moral, jeez, I can't read today. It may be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated, but those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. And I think this pretty much sums up where the Democrats are and where the liberals are in our country. They are so certain that their plan for us is better than our plan for us that they will not stop. They will not stop because they do so with the approval of their own conscience. Empowering ourselves and each other means that we have to have a different mindset and we have to be willing to look at different ways of winning. And here we've got a knight marching off to battle. He's got his sword in hand. He's ready to do battle. He doesn't have time to listen to any bright ideas, talk to any salesman. The salesman's over here with what? A Gatling gun. A Gatling gun. But he's too busy to listen. This is the situation I've been in around the state for the past year or two, talking about ways we can win. I've got the Gatling gun, and they want to go off and slay dragons with swords. And I'm going to show you some of the Gatling guns tonight. And you're going to love these. You're going to feel good. You're not going to be depressed when you leave here. I won't give a depressing speech. So the way we beat them is we use their own bureaucracy against them. If we can't change laws, we screw them up by inhibiting them. If we can take the federal regulations that were designed and we can actually use the federal regulations against them. I'm going to show you how we do that tonight. It's being done. And we can actually use real science to embarrass them. But you can't just do it alone. You've got to get on the radio, on television. I've been doing my best to get on television, on radio, and just bring this stuff out and embarrass them as much as I can. And it's working. It's working. We've caused a havoc with the Conowingo Dam and the rain tax, and we'll talk about that. And the effect of all this really is to outmarket them. Because that's what we're in a marketing war. We have to beat them. We have to sell. We have to be Avis. We have to try harder against Hertz. We're number 2. We have to try harder. Okay. So I'm going to show you some action tools to fight outside of the legislature. This is not a Democrat versus Republican issue. Yep, I got to tell you guys, it's been an education for me. It is not a Democrat versus Republican issue. There are solid conservative Democrats in places like the Eastern Shore that are warriors for conservative values. Yeah, I've met them. Guys like Ron Fithian, Kent County Commissioner. And there are rhinos in places like Carroll County that are everything, they represent everything that's wrong with the Republican Party in Carroll County today. I mean, in the country today. So we're going to talk about nullification. I know you know about this. I'm going to touch on it briefly. How many of you have seen my presentation on nullification? Good. Not too many. Good. Then you'll have fun tonight. Coordination. Coordination is a legal term for using their own regulations against them. Regulatory disruptions. How to disrupt their own regulations by putting language in that screws them up at the local level. You're going to laugh your head off when I show you some of these. Using high information to publicly embarrass them. Simply having so much more information than them, which is so easy to do, because they have no information. I mean, the various state departments, I won't mention them here since I'm being filmed, but the various state departments it is like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. And when I fight some of these issues, I tell people, you know what my role is? To see the state is the wizard behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. And I tell people, you know who I am? I'm Toto, the little dog that's pulling the curtain from behind and exposing them for what they really are, which is empty fools with nothing there but a bunch of bluster and blunder. And creating civics ministries to actualize our conservative base inside of churches. Okay, now this is all stuff that's developing now. Some of it's being done. So let's talk about guerrilla tool number 1, non-compliance, nullification. What is it? Well, you all know that. How many know what nullification is? Yeah, I thought you all did. It's when a jury or elected official declare a law to be pretended legislation. Pretend, just like from the Declaration of Independence, pretended legislation. It's not real, it's invalid because it contains provisions that are unconstitutional. Now, I want to correct a misconception right away before I get into this. Somebody put on my Facebook page, yeah, Rich, nullification, civil disobedience. Wrong. Nullification is the 180-degree antithesis of civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is when you decide you don't like our gun law, so you run out to your street with your gun, right, like they do in the middle, shoot you, and then you get arrested and you go to jail. That is not effective because you lose, right? They lock you up, you lose. Nullification prevents civil disobedience because with nullification, government, even if it's at a local level, uses a local legislative action to declare a certain state or federal law invalid. Now, the lawyers and the Supreme Court and the state will argue that we don't have the power to do it. It matters not. I don't care whether you think I have the power or not. I'm going to pass a resolution, and we did, that says that this law is invalid. And then, if you get stopped in your car and you have to go to court, your lawyer walks in and says, well, Your Honor, it says right here in the Second Amendment Preservation Resolution that this law is not valid, that our commissioners declared it invalid. What have I done to the citizen now which is about to be arrested, or been arrested? What? I've given him a defense.
He wins.
I give him a defense. Your Honor, he's got a right to listen to his county commissioners. They declared it invalid. See, it doesn't matter. They always tell me what I can't do. I'm tired of Republicans telling me what I can't do because the Democrats know no limits to what they can do. If they can violate the Constitution, we can sure as hell pass laws to try to preserve it. But how many Republicans want to do that? Almost none. Almost none. As John said, they just don't want to act. All right, so let's continue on. I got a little yellow flag at the bottom here to show you what we're talking about. So continue on with nullification. The lawyers say, it can't be done. Rich is in la-la land. He's delusional. You can't do this. There's no procedure. We can't find a book that tells us how to do it. Well, guess what? That's because it's not a procedure. Nullification is a movement. It's a movement. And it works. Look how well it's worked with illegal immigration. City after city, county after county declared themselves sanctuary counties for illegal immigration in direct violation of federal immigration laws. And guess what they've done? Effectively nullified our federal laws. It's a movement. The trick to nullification really working well is you got to get lots of local governments to do it. Okay. All right. As been done before, yep, I talked about illegal immigration already. Massachusetts overtly nullified the Defense of Marriage Act by performing same-sex marriages. See, the left's been nullifying our laws and our Constitution for years. We just don't recognize it. We're stuck in with blinders. We're so used to seeing them do things that are unconstitutional that we don't even see it anymore. We take their lawlessness for granted. We hold ourselves to a different standard than they hold themselves to, and therefore we lose. So the bottom line is nullification is already happening. I had a lot more examples, but for brevity, I'm keeping this short. So am I ready? Massachusetts overtly nullified the Defense of Marriage Act by performing same-sex marriages. See, the left's been nullifying our laws and our Constitution for years. We just don't recognize it. We're stuck in with blinders. We're so used to seeing them do things that are unconstitutional that we don't even see it anymore. We take their lawlessness for granted, short. So my position is, if they can do it, then we can do it. That was what I told one on the Fall Commission. If they can do it, I'm going to do it. You can't do it, well, I'm going to do it. So in Carroll County, we stood our ground. We stood our ground, and we passed a resolution to declare Carroll County to be Maryland's first Second Amendment sanctuary county. It was a beautiful thing. You see, I wanted a phrase that I could use that would make it impossible for me to argue with me. And I lay in bed at night thinking about these things. I said, well, if Montgomery County is a sanctuary county for illegal immigration, then why don't I try the same trick? I'll declare ourselves to be a sanctuary county for the Second Amendment. And then they can't attack me without attacking themselves. I put them in an impossible position. I boxed them in where they could not go after us. I'll probably get arrested when I leave here, but I was worried about that. My wife had the phone numbers of several constitutional attorneys that agreed they would defend me if I was arrested. We'll see. Okay, I don't want to be arrested, but if they do, then you're all going to raise hell for me, right? Yes. Okay, so how did we do it? I want to show you how we did it. This is interesting. First, I created a website at my own expense called upholdmyoath.com, and it said, are you ready to uphold your oath of office? What does the resolution look like? I love this. This is such a beautiful document. I'm going to read you just about a tenth of it, but I want you to get a sense for how good it must have felt. Because after our delegation finished oppressing all of our citizens, and we could have said there's nothing to do about the gun bill, we had 230 people standing up yelling and cheering and clapping. So this was the preamble, just an excerpt from the preamble. I had help from Michael Peruka and Derek Howell at the Institute of the Constitution on this. I want to give them their plug. In order to preserve the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, recognize that it is our duty to be ever mindful that our civil government exercises its just and lawful authority subject to the moral law of Almighty God, and that all powers granted to civil government are derived through the people. You like that? This is in the document itself. We read this in front of 230 people with the TV cameras rolling. Therefore, it is the duty of the people through the agency of the lesser magistrate, that's me, lesser magistrate, a lowly commissioner, to resist the civil government when and where it exceeds its authority, and to remind overstepping officials thereof from whence their just powers devolve. Devolve, not evolve, devolve. You like that? Oh, here it is. No Carroll County government funds, resource, employee, agency, contractor, detention center, or office may be used for purposes of enforcing any element of any gun bill passed by Annapolis, and hereby declare Carroll County to be a Second Amendment sanctuary county. Isn't that beautiful? The left went apoplectic over this. They loved it. And this is, the real document was much longer and much more beautiful to read. It was a beautiful, and we went so far as, by the way, I thought we'd throw one good one in there just in case. We declared that in the event that the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, the UNATT, was passed, we declared that null and void in Carroll County also. That was the Second Amendment Preservation Resolution. We just said we're not enforcing it. What would have happened if 16 or 18 counties had all passed the same resolution? What would have happened? Somebody tell me. What would have happened? What would the paper said the next day? What would the Washington Post and Baltimore Sun have said? What would it say? Come on, somebody tell me. What would the paper say? 16 counties said we're not doing it. Tell me.
Yeah, revolt.
Counties overturn the law.
Yeah.
Counties rebel against governor, refuse to implement law. And everybody would have gotten very brave. And then we would have all called each other and said, let's go a step further. Let's declare the carry clause.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
Why didn't we have 15 or 16 counties pass this? Why did only 3 counties pass a version of this? Hartford, Cecil, and Carroll. Why? Why was there only 3? Where were the other Republicans? Where were they?
There's too many Democrats, we can't do it.
Let me tell you where they were. They were there being reasonable. While unreasonable people are taking away their rights, Rich is crazy. Rich is crazy. This is unreasonable. And I always say, in our efforts to show the left how reasonable we are, we have simply proven to them that we will tolerate the intolerable. And that is not acceptable anymore. We have no place to retreat to anymore. Let's continue on. Second tool, changing gears, coordination. Using federal laws against them. You're going to love this. Use federal laws and regulations against the federal and state government. Think of it this way. How many of you have watched Star Trek? Right? You see they fire a phaser and some kind of a beam shoots out towards Larry. What would happen if Larry held a mirror up? A metal mirror and it reflected it back to me. What would happen? It would kill me. Think of it that's what coordination does. It's holding up a reflector and reflecting the laws back to me. You've got to obey your own laws. You're buying your own laws, and we're holding you accountable for buying. And you're going to see some of the laws. I'm going to show you what they are. Okay, so there are federal laws that protect us from things like the rain tax, the Chesapeake Bay Initiative, the flush tax, these ridiculous regulations, accounting for growth. There are all kinds of regulations. There are all kinds of regulations that protect us. The first one, you can tell by the name of it what it does. The trouble is, everybody's ignoring it. The Federal Unfunded Mandates Reform Act. Federal Unfunded Mandates Reform Act. Enacted to end the imposition of federal mandates on state and local governments if you don't give us enough funding. Where are the Republicans saying you have to obey this law, you can't make us do this? Where are the Republicans? See, they're ignoring it. If we pass laws to protect us and Republicans won't demand that they be enforced, they're going to ignore them. And that's what's happening. They're ignoring them. You have to demand that your local officials obey the laws. And they cannot pass these mandates, they cannot implement these federal mandates in a manner that may displace other essential state and local government priorities. What's an essential state or local government priority? What do you do as a county commission? Well, you pave roads, that's a priority. You run schools, that's a priority. You fill the potholes, that's a priority. Excuse me? You run a sheriff's department, police, that's a priority. So when they do these things, all I have to do is stand up and say, stop, just stop, stop. Federal Unfunded Mandates Reform Act says you can't do it. You are impacting my ability as a county commission to fund all these other necessary services. Therefore, you're interfering with my priorities. And you're violating the Federal Unfunded Mandates Reform Act. You like that one? Anybody asserting it here in Maryland? No, of course not. Of course not. The Federal Data Quality Act that holds governments accountable for the quality of their data. It must be, they have to ensure that it's valid, it's accurate, and it's applicable. Okay? Let's talk about the septic bill. Where's the science come from the septic bill?
Florida.
Yes, who said Florida? Frank, say it again.
Florida.
And what did they do? They used you tell them, Frank, in 30 seconds or less, tell them what they did with it.
They did studies conducted at the University of Florida on Florida soils, and they, as well as Washington State, and wonderful people in Department of Environment, when you call down to ask them, well, how are you coming up with all this justification? What are your computer models? Where's this data coming from? They'll send you the PDF file. It's from Florida, from Washington. Calibrated to Maryland soils.
Right. None of it's been calibrated for Maryland soils. They just took a model that in Florida was questionable, and they imported it from Maryland, so this is what we're using as a basis. Is that valid? Is it accurate? Is it applicable? Are they violating the Federal Data Quality Act? Yeah. Yeah. You bet you they are. How about this one? How about some judicial precedents that actually help us that we're ignoring in Maryland? The Virginia Department of Transportation versus the EPA, where Judge Imo Brady determined that stormwater runoff is not a pollutant under the Clean Water Act, and therefore the EPA may not regulate stormwater as a pollutant, nor may stormwater be regulated as a surrogate for sediment because the court determined it is not within the ambit of EPA's Pollution Diet Authority, TMDL, Total Maximum Daily Load Pollution Diet Authority. Isn't that interesting? What are we doing in Maryland right now with the rain tax? What are we doing? We're regulating what? Stormwater. In Virginia, they said that it's not under the ambit of the EPA. Oh, well, Commissioner Rothschild, it's not the federal government. It's the state of Maryland that's doing that. Oh, no. The state of Maryland is doing it under the auspices of the Clean Water Act. The EPA delegated its authority to the state, and then the state delegated its authority to me. So if I inherit the responsibilities of complying with the federal TMDL, total maximum daily load pollution diet, then I also inherit the rights. And it says here that the EPA doesn't have any jurisdiction over it. So if the federal government doesn't have any jurisdiction over it under the Clean Water Act, then neither does the state. Are you getting excited yet? Okay, let's keep going. My favorite, the National Environmental Policy Act, the granddaddy of all federal laws that protect us. It ensures that environmental regulations do not injure the human environment. Do not injure the human environment. Well, there you go. The human environment, that's our air and our water. What good is that, Rich? Well, you're wrong. Because they define effects. Effects, and effects include not only the effect on air and water, but on our historic, our culture, our economic, our social, our health, with a direct and indirect or cumulative. Our heritage, our historic. So farming is a historic practice in Carroll County, and my farmers are selling off their dairy herds. Is that a negative effect? Guess what? Environment, are they damaging the human environment? Yes. Yes. Let's continue on. I got more. So, the bottom line here is this. When I implement rain taxes and all these stormwater regulations, and my farmers stop planting crops, and they sell their dairy herds, and my creameries are shutting down, and my businesses are leaving, what is it doing to the economy of my county? It's destroying it. What's it doing to the farming heritage? It's destroying it. Do I have a cause of action under the National Environmental Policy Act? Yes. But here's the problem with all these federal regulations. Most local officials are intimidated by them. They don't want to take the time to read them. And they can't believe that there's really a Gatling gun. This is the Gatling gun. They're trying to fight in the legislature. They're running into battle. 20 Republicans against 60 Democrats, and they're getting their heads chopped off in the legislature. This is what we should be doing. And it's being done in other parts of the country, and we're winning nearly all the time when we do this. We're winning nearly all the time. We've done 100 times across the U.S., never east of the Mississippi, though. I brought this to Maryland last year. People laughed at me and belittled me for several months until we brought a law firm in that studied it and said, you know, Rich is right. I think this is real. And now, 2 counties in the Eastern Shore have filed coordination letters with the state government for harm to their industries on the Eastern Shore as of about a month ago. And I'm very close to doing it in Carroll County for some other reasons I don't get to right now. So they cannot force us to do things under the auspices of the Clean Air and Clean Water Act that harm the human environment. And the human environment is not just air and water, it's our man-made environment, which is our economy, our heritage, our jobs, our ability to fund other priorities. Does that make sense? And if they do, then we have a right to invite, oh, you're violating NEPA, time out, you can't make us do this. You say, well, why did somebody do this before? Because they're like the king on the horse. He can't believe there's such a thing as a Gatling gun. This is the Gatling gun. Okay, so what do we do about it? Well, we coordinate. We file a letter that says, dear state government, we hereby inform you that in the National Environmental Policy Act, you are harming the human environment in my county, and come on down and coordinate with us. Coordinate means take their plans and coordinate them with our plans. It's not a parent-child relationship. It's not a consulting relationship. The courts have determined that it must be an equal relationship. Not a parent-child, must be equal. They have to coordinate. They have to do this. Not this. This is what they're doing now. Hammering us down. This. Okay? They said, well, we go around to the counties. I said, no, those are traveling infomercials. When the Mayor Department of Planning runs around to the counties and has these PowerPoint presentations, that's an infomercial. That is not coordinating. Coordinating is when I sit with Larry and I say, Larry, you want me to spend $30 million on stormwater? I can't afford it. And it doesn't have any use anyway. So prove to me this is going to improve the Chesapeake Bay. And I said, I tell you what, I'm not going to do that, but I'll pay one farmer not to grow corn this year. How's that? I'll take out 10 times as much pollution for 1/100th the cost. Would that be okay? That's coordinated. Okay. Let's keep going. So what is the law? In federal regulations, coordination requires federal and state agencies to work with local governments on an equal footing to ensure that the regulations do not injure the human environment. All right, ready? What's the human environment include? Historical, cultural, other critical services, economic, you get it. And I'm going to give you another definition. What is in effect, again, I'm repeating myself, but NEPA established something called the Council of Environmental Quality, and it defines effects as including ecological effects, aesthetic effects, historic effects, cultural effects, economic, and even social or health effects. If I can't fund my senior centers and it causes a hardship for seniors, that's affecting the social structure of my county. You see how beautiful this is? Whether direct, indirect, or cumulative. Oh, we've been doing this for years, Commissioner. Well, we've now reached the point where it's harming us. We could afford it before, we can't afford it anymore. And so the cumulative effect has now reached the breaking point. We've hit the last straw on the camel's back is where we are. So what can we do? We begin coordination with the federal and state governments because these environmental mandates have negative effects on our human environment. They do not comply with federal laws, and because their plans are inconsistent with government plans, and their plans are harming us. Okay? I've got 2 counties that have already moved forward with this as of January on the Eastern Shore, and it's my hope that Carroll County will move forward, possibly with another western county in the very near future. Has it ever worked? Yes, it's been done in Wisconsin, Texas, California, Colorado, all over the country, and the success rate has been in the 90+ percentile range. Now, moving on to the next thing, because this is really kind of a thing. Remember I said coordination is integrating their plans with our plans, their plans with our plans. Our plans have to disrupt their plans. Right? Our plans have to be different. If their plan says you're going to spend $2 billion and bankrupt yourself so you can take out 1/1000th of 1% of the pollution, then I have to have a plan that says something else. Let me give you an example of a regulatory disruption. Here's a local policy I proposed. I don't have my 3 votes yet, but I'll get it. I think I'll get it. Here's what I want to put into our local master plan. You're going to love this one. Now remember, the rain tax is supposed to be a fee that's imposed to cover the cost of abating polluted water that leaves the property. Who knows the difference between a tax and a fee? A tax everybody pays. A fee is supposed to be tied to some particular activity. You pay a fee every time you dispose of old car tires. You dispose of 1 car tire, you pay $2. You dispose of 2, you pay $4. You see, this is supposed to be a fee. Well, has anybody ever measured the pollution coming off of your property? No. No. So how do you impose a fee when you've never even measured the pollution coming off, if there even is any? So here's my proposal. The presumptive position of the Board of Commissioners is that the use of private property is not harmful to the environment. In dispute, the burden of proof shall be on the state using actual local data to prove impairment and a nexus to alleged impairment actually exists. Let me repeat that. The burden of proof. If you think there's pollution, then the burden of proof shall be on the government. In other words, our property owners are innocent until proven guilty. Your plan now conflicts with my plan. Because your assumption is that my property owners are guilty until proven innocent, and my presumption is that my property owners are innocent until proven guilty. But Commissioner, you can't put that in the plan. It conflicts with what they're doing. Now you've cracked the code. That's exactly right. When I'm in planning and zoning, they say, we can't do this. Yes, that's exactly why you should put it in. Every time you have an opportunity to contradict their requirements, just put something in that contradicts it. And now, out he goes to court, his lawyer gets, well, it says right here in the master plan. The presumptive position of the Board of Commissioners of Carroll County is that a property owner's land is not polluting the environment. The burden of proof is on the state. State government, show me the proof. Do they have any proof?
No.
How much do they? No, or 1%. They have nothing. They have nothing. They've never been challenged. They've never been challenged. Make it fast.
Make it quick. To go along with this point, you call your local, like in Howard County, I called down to our local stormwater guru, and Jim Caldwell, and asked him specifically that. Since this is a fee, can you show me the water dye quality test that you conducted on my property, show how my property is negatively impacting the watershed? He said, well, we don't have that. Okay, so you're taxing gravel driveways. Can you show how my gravel driveway is negatively affecting the water quality in Howard County? Well, we don't have that. I said, well, if this is a utility, which means I'm using something, which means there's a fee, what exactly am I being charged for? And he couldn't answer.
No, they don't have any science. They have no science. They have no evidence, at least. Okay. So, yeah, presumptive position is that you're innocent until proven guilty. Isn't that beautiful and simple? I got a bunch of other ones like this too. I only gave you one example, but I got other ones like this too that are just as much fun. Guerrilla tool number 4, using high information to embarrass them. We have a rain tax. And all the environmental groups are out there, oh, you don't do with this rain tax, the Chesapeake Bay is going to die, and you know, you're taking, that was what they said, we need to take a step forward. This is a step forward. It's a step forward if you consider going from here to California on your hands and knees and crawling there, a step. Because we'll never get there, okay? We'll die of old age before we get there. This is the Conowingo Dam, the ticking time bomb. This is what it looks like during a storm. Now, let me see something here real quickly. Yeah, okay, good. All right, make sure I have a slide. This is what the Chesapeake Bay looks like after Tropical Storm Lee. This is the Conowingo Dam here. What color is the water? It's brown, yellow-brown. This storm lasted a few days. 42, in that one-week storm, 42,000 tons of nitrogen, 10,000 tons of phosphorus, 19 million tons of sediment. Okay. And the state says, well, Commissioner, but that's only half the pollution. You have to do your shit. That's half, and we have to do our half. But here's what they ignored. This Conowingo Dam was 120 feet deep when it was built. Anybody know how deep the sludge is that's accumulated in it now?
100 feet.
100, who said 100 feet? Right, John, 100 feet deep. The dam's almost completely full. Nutrient-rich sediment sludge sitting there, like a dirty water filter you haven't changed in 75 years. Storm comes, high-velocity waters, scouring effect, lifts the stuff up, ejects it through the dam, and you've got millions of tons come through in a matter of hours or days. And it exceeds the bay's assimilation ability. When that sediment comes through that dam, 19 million tons, what happens to that sediment? Does it get flushed through to the Chesapeake Bay? No. What happens to it? Where does it go? Exactly. It settles to the bottom. 6 inches thick. And guess what it does when it gets to the bottom? It smothers the oyster beds and it smothers the submerged aquatic vegetation, thereby killing the bay from the bottom up. Well, that's all the good, Commissioner, but you still have to manage the water that comes off of your stormwater. No, I don't, because it's a waste of money. Because in 5 years and $50 million, you know how many tons of nitrogen Carroll County could take out of its system? In 5 years and $50 million, how many tons can we take out using stormwater management? Anyone guess? 5 tons. 50 million, 5 years, 5 tons. And you know how long it'll take us? We will take out, you know how long it'll take that, during the next tropical storm, we will take out, the amount of pollution we can take out cumulatively in 5 years, $50 million. The next time there's a tropical storm, that same amount of nitrogen will flow through that dam in 60 seconds. 1 minute, 5 years, and $50 million wasted. This is foolish. And I've been on television and radio giving the same presentation. So let's look using the data from the U.S. Geological Service, federal government. Here's the total Chesapeake Bay load of nitrogen. Nitrogen's the bad guy. Causes algae blooms. Here's the Susquehanna River, 71,000 tons. State of Maryland has approximately $14 billion to spend on pollution control. Where are we spending it? Here we go. Stormwater management, septic systems, and wastewater treatment plants. Here we go. So I have to say, they say they're putting the ban on pollution diet. Well, if this is the base pollution diet, this is equivalent to finding a man who's 400 pounds overweight and saying I'm going to control his diet by taking away his chiclets. Why stuffing his face with it. That's where we're spending our money. Does anybody here see the futility of this? This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Okay, let's keep going. Here's some interesting facts for you. At $3,000 a pound to abate nitrogen, it would cost $250 billion to abate the nitrogen that enters the bay from just one storm. $250 billion. What's the total? Billion. Trillion. Million. billions, 250 billion. That's from one storm. That's from one storm. Now, what's the total amount of money we have to clean up the bay in Maryland? I just told you, 14 billion. Does anybody see the ridiculousness of this? This is outrageously stupid. At best, $150,000 a week that Carroll will spend on stormwater treatment every week for the next 5 years would reduce pollution in the Chesapeake Bay by 15 ten-thousandths of 1%. Which is about 3 ten-thousandths of 1% a year. Now let me put that in perspective. If you climb the Empire State Building 3 ten-thousandths of 1% a year, how many years would it take to get to the top of the Empire State Building? 300,000 years. But I got some very good news for you. At this rate, it would only take you 2,000 years to reach the second floor. This is the kind of stuff I say on television. It's outrageously stupid. And while we're worried about, it's not on the slide, while we're worried about the rain that comes across from your downspout, which you could almost drink, don't you all agree you could almost drink it? Guess what the state's position is in their document with respect to raw sewage spills? The state says, since they're illegal, they're deemed not to occur, and therefore they don't account for raw sewage spills in the base pollution diet. We're just going to ignore the raw sewage. We're worried about your rain, but we're going to ignore raw sewage. Now here's a quiz. Since 2006, how many raw sewage spills have there been in Maryland? 14,897. Totaling 8.2 billion gallons. And I got better news. That doesn't include the sewage that leaks out of the pipes underground, the 100-year infrastructure underground, where the leakage rates could be as high as 50%. So that's probably about another 80 billion gallons probably. So while we're worried about stormwater, we've got tens of billions of gallons of raw sewage leaking out of underground pipes that were made of terracotta or wood in the 1800s, 1900s. You see how stupid all this is? This is just stupid. If I could get every elected official talking about this stuff, then we could win. But that's just a few of us. We give credit to Chip McLeod, Jeff Blomquist of Funkin Bolton, law firm of Funkin Bolton, and the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, Ron Fithian, Democrat, and we give credit to them. They've done a lot of good work in this area. So, they also say they've been on top of, don't pay attention to Mr. Rothschild. We've been aware of this. We've been watching this dam for years. We're taking steps to fix it. We got it under control. Just ignore the commissioner. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not true. And I'm going to prove it to you right now that that's not true, that they're not aware of it. While they were wasting their time swatting mosquitoes, they ignored the 600-pound gorilla in the room. During 2012, the companies that operated the dam, Exelon and Constellation Energy, merged. And the net merger required Maryland state approval. And there was a $1 billion investment package that was agreed upon with the state government. All kinds of important things like researching offshore wind power, and and burning chicken coop, and education for our children. How much of it did the state allocate to clean up the dam, dredge that 600 million tons of sludge that's up there? How much did they allocate of the $1 billion? Anybody know?
Zero.
Zero. Were they aware of it? No. For 20 years, the experts have been chasing it over here. And then a bunch of lowly county commissioners, myself and 6 others, and a really good law firm, said, hey, the dam. It's the dam, stupid. It's the dam, stupid. It's the dam. And they're even acknowledging it now. They're beginning to acknowledge it now. And they just passed a bill, a resolution, joint resolution requiring an investigation of the dam and what it would cost to dredge it and clean it up. Okay, pretty good people, 10 out of a county of 170,000 people. See, where were we? Where were the conservatives that stood to benefit by this? Where were all of you? See, they're all asleep. So I want churches to create civics ministries. We're not going to call them political ministries. We're not allowed to. They'll get scared. We're not going to call them government ministries. They'll get scared. Civics ministries. I take 6 people from Campaign for Liberty who go to XYZ church, and I say, you're our civics ministry. Your job is to keep an eye on the media, attend the hearings once in a while, and report back, and let us know if anything interesting happened that runs for or contrary to our Judeo-Christian values. And then one day you see, hey, this crazy commissioner named Rothschild, another crazy one called Frazier, they decided to put in a school choice program. We should support this. There's something like 75 churches in Carroll County. If everyone had sent 2 people, we'd have 150 people in the hearing room testifying for it. They were nowhere. Civics Ministries, a group of watchers. They keep their eye on the railroad tracks. They see a train coming that they like or don't like. They activate. They go to the government hearings and they testify. That's all. This is not complicated. You like that? I got to start rolling this out to churches. Good news, I got some great coverage. Saw Catholic, the Parish Times or something, national publication, published it.
It might have been in the Pew or something like that.
The Pew, they had a whole article on it, and I was thrilled to see that the other day. So let me recap. How do we stop them? Nullification, declaring their laws valid, refusing to implement their bad laws at the county level. Coordination, holding that mirror up, reflecting the federal and state laws relating to the environment against them and holding them accountable for it. Regulatory disruptions, putting in language which directly contradicts their assumptions. The presumptive position is that you're not guilty of polluting the environment, and if we're going to have a fight, then the burden of proof is on me to prove it, and you're innocent until proven guilty. Using high information, such as these statistics on the dam, presented in such a way that it really makes an impact. Dan Bongino came over to me a few weeks ago and he says, Rich, that story you told about the cats was great. I told it on the radio. I was on a couple of radio shows with Dan Bongino. And he said, that was great. You got a couple more stories like that. I'll tell you the story I told him. I said, Dan, at $50 million, I said, I need to point out, to take out 5 tons of pollution, every stray cat puts out 3 pounds of nitrogen a year. Every stray cat. 3 pounds of nitrogen. There are 180,000 stray cats in Baltimore alone. That's 540,000 pounds of nitrogen. At that rate, I said, Dan, it would be cheaper for me to build a Hyatt Regency Grand Hotel in West Virginia, outside of the watershed, round up all the cats and ship them off and put them in the Hyatt Grand Regency than to do stormwater management. And he loved that. He was laughing about this. He says, you got to give me some more stories about cats, Rich. But it's using information like that where people can get their teeth around it. It's becoming a communicator, a marketing person. And finally, civics ministries. We got to actualize. Some of our strongest supporters from churches, we need to actualize them. I do have a complete PowerPoint presentation. It's about 20 slides long. It's 99% done. I'll release it in its current format. I need some biblical references in 1 or 2 slides that I couldn't find because I'm not a biblical scholar, although I do consider myself to be a Christian. But anybody wants it, you can have it. Take it into your church. Meet with your elders. Meet with your pastor. I want to set up a civics ministry. I got the whole slideshow ready to go. Okay. So conclusion. We're getting, actually, I don't go to conclusion. I want to say what would happen tomorrow if all 10 counties that were hit with the rain tax had all joint simultaneously passed resolutions saying we're not doing it? What happened if the paper said counties rebel against government? They do this because we let them. Republicans are not fighting. And I say, and the ones that are saying they're fighting, here's what they're doing. They're fighting like this. They're fighting while they're retreating. So my new speaking point is we need Republicans who will stand their ground. Standing their ground means you don't retreat. You fight back against things like the gun bill. Does that make sense? So, conclusion. This is I forgot who wrote this picture, the empowered man. I don't know if you can see this, but John McNaughton. John McNaughton. Thank you. George Washington. This is a guy, average man, holding up the Constitution. The lights kind of. That's all right. You got George Washington up there smiling and clapping. You got Ronald Reagan. He's got a big smile on his face. You got Obama standing right here, going like this. You got Bill Clinton over here, hanging his head in shame. Okay, you get the idea. And you should ask every one of your local officials. When history writes about them, how will they depict them and their role in what's going on in this state? Ashamed? Idle and perplexed? There you go. Abraham Lincoln, Ronald Reagan, George Washington, Ben Franklin, I think. Average man. George Bush, just standing back there with a kind of looking confused. You get the idea. What role? Ashamed, idle, perplexed, complacent, or empowered. We will have as much power as we take. And they will take as much power as we will give them. So tell them to act and uphold their oath of office. Do something. Do anything, but do something. Don't come back here and tell us it would have been worse if they hadn't been there. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that crap from my own delegation. Do something.
Their emails are on there. Their phone numbers are on there. It's the entire Harford County delegation, the Republican delegation, put this bill forward. I have, and I'll even give you guys a little bit of a tip. I've got 2 copies of the bill here. It's only about a paragraph long of what they're changing to the election law. And that's what the bill is, a change to the election law. So please come up, read it before you leave. That way when you get a hold of them, they go, you're just believing some radical and you've never actually read the bill. It's clear. It's plain English what they're doing. We're not hiding anything. We're not misleading anyone. We have several emails from different delegates on their canned response. So expect a canned response that goes something like this. The bill is only for Harford County. While I appreciate hearing from people all around the state, it's a local issue, doesn't affect you. You really believe that? These delegates also serve in this county. Same delegates that are on that list.
2 of them live in Baltimore County.
Yeah, 2 of them even live here.
Themselves voting members of the Harford County Central Committee.
Correct.
I currently serve on the Baltimore County Central Committee. I can't speak to the Harford County rules, but I can tell you right now that in Baltimore County, on our Central Committee, it is a violation of Baltimore County Central Committee bylaws to
No,
not
it's-
live
yeah, it's
in
true.
Baltimore County and vote on issues on our Central Committee. So they are breaking their own rules in doing this.
Correct. So they're going to tell you it's a local issue. That's not true. It's not a local issue. This affects everyone because no matter where tyranny is spread, it needs to be opposed. The second thing is they'll say that it only makes the delegates from Harford County ex facto members or ex officio members, so they only can vote on a couple things. Well, the couple things just happen to be removal of voted in elected members. And then the second thing they can do is replace them. They get to vote on who replaces them. Well, you don't need to vote on any other issues if you can control who the heck's voting. Like, that's the dumbest response I've ever heard. All right, next. Why is this important? If a House or Senate seat in the Maryland General Assembly becomes vacant, the Central Committee fills the vacancy. If it's a good idea for the Central Committee to fill a delegate seat, bottom up, well then, of course, wouldn't it be a good idea for a delegate to vote on the removal of a member or to replace a member? That's top down. That's not the way our government structure was designed. It's designed to go bottom up. And this is in her own words, admitting that if it's okay to go this way, then it's certainly fine. So then why can't Obama just replace a senator if he wants to? I mean, think about that. It's lunacy. So there's 12 members, and then they go into like the numbers game, right? Then they're like, well, if we had 7 delegates that are voting among the 12 members, then there's no way they can have a majority. It doesn't matter. They shouldn't be voting anyway. And if they've got, somebody's brother that just happens to be sitting on there, and a couple other people, then all of a sudden they easily have a majority of the delegation, of the Central Committee. So this is all lies. When there was a vacancy, they tried to give this example from 2 years ago when there was a vacancy, that the state party chairperson who was moving out of state filled the seat, and it was a terrible thing because they didn't care about the party. Well, there is bylaws for the Republican Party that these central committees run by. If that was truly a concern, they'd be working with the state party chair and the Harford County Central Committee to update the bylaws to address that. That's not what they're doing. They're passing legislation to just override the committee's desire. This one's a great one. The bill will ensure that a Central Committee member cannot be removed from the Harford Central Committee without input from the delegates. As if that should be part of the concern. We want to protect the members of the Central Committee from any undue termination.
That's the ability to vote people off.
So they're going to make sure that our overlords are going to make sure that this is unbelievable. This is if you email them, there's a good chance you'll get this exact same form letter back. And if you do, respond back and just tear them apart because this is asinine.
Insult to our intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. HB 13 will make sure the Harford County Central Committee is not taken over by other elected officials, but better name recognition on the ballot. So their concern is they better take over the Central Committee so that nobody else does. I mean, am I the only one who thinks this is crazy? So then they go on to go, the members of the Harford County delegation value the Republican Central Committees across our state. I'm good friends with many members. And when I spoke to the GOP state convention in the fall, I generally thanked all the members for their selfless commitment and countless hours of their service to our party. if you're a member of a central committee, thank you in bold. Our party is better because of your service and you're not thanked often enough. And then, finally, this is great. I hope you don't believe everything you read in an email, but take the time to investigate issues and think for yourself. Wow, I'm so glad that they told me that. And then they accused him of, it's unfortunate I've received many nasty and mean emails from Republicans who jumped to conclusions and did not read the bill. Well, I'm sorry, the bill is, seriously, it's these like bold parts right here. I mean, it's not hard to read the bill, and it does like 3 things. So, you know, don't read the bill. In the future, you have a question about a bill or issue, I'm happy to answer your questions. But I ask you to refrain from calling me names. So, okay, don't call her. Don't call any of them names. But if the shoe fits, I'm just letting you know, this is a survival battle. If this passes, what this will do is it will purge liberty activists, constitutionalists, Tea Party members from the Harford County Central Committee. Immediately. This bill was put in as an emergency measure. What that means is as soon as it passes, it goes into effect. Of all the stuff that's going on in our state, Common Core, rain tax, all this stuff, this is where they want to spend their time and effort. Rather than doing things that could actually advance liberty, and instead of just complaining they don't have enough our votes in Annapolis, actually doing something. What they choose to do is attack the liberty activists that are moving into the party. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I am asking you to get involved. If you've never done it before, send an email to every one of them. And forward this information out to everybody you know to get on board. We're going media, we're going everywhere with this. This has to be stopped. It has to be stopped right away.
And they will say they love the Tea Party. They're Tea Party people.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about even playing the radio clip.
Yeah.
But I'll spare you. But it was vile. I mean, these guys were absolutely attacking, calling us like crazy radicals. The worst thing that for the whole Republican Party in the state of Maryland is us, is you guys. We are the worst thing that could ever happen to them. It is unbelievable. It's seriously unbelievable. And so, unfortunately, we didn't want it to go here. But the battle lines have been drawn, and we have to double down. So, I expect you guys to step up and let as many people as you know as possible, because this is that important. I've never done a call to action in these meetings before. This is my first one, and I asked to do it because I wanted to stress the importance of this bill. This is absolutely critical. If they purge us out of the party, think of the power that strips them of us. I mean, all the effort that we've been doing to build up 100 people to file for office. 100 people across the state. Gone. The strike of the pen. That's ridiculous. And they need to be held accountable for that. That's all we're looking to do is hold politicians accountable. It's the first sign of accountability, and they're like, look, we got to get rid of these people. We like to just sit down in Annapolis and twiddle our thumbs and complain about not having enough cars. So that's it. Please, the sign-in sheet's going around. Sign up if you haven't. This is how we communicate. If we don't have your email, we can't let you know stuff like this comes up. And when stuff like this comes up, we can't wait until our April meeting to inform you guys. We need to have action now. So this could happen any day. I'm going to wrap up now. I appreciate your time for this evening. Our next meeting is on the flyer. It's next Wednesday. It's the second Wednesday in April. We usually have these meetings the first Wednesday of every month. We got locked out of the Holiday Inn because they had 2 functions, March and April, so we bumped it to the second Wednesday of the month. So just take note, it's April 9th, not April 2nd. We have a resource table up front here. All these books are fantastic, Liberty books, Constitutionalist books. I suggest you take a look and pick out something, good reading material. All the money that we make there goes back to the organization. It's donation. We use it for printing lids and notifying consumers. One last reminder, the Rand Paul event, that's coming up in a couple weeks. So don't forget to buy our tickets. And lastly, hopefully we'll see you guys at Chili's. We can hang out and talk some more. So have a good night.